Okay, we're given a price P and a quantity X, and they're related by what we call a demand equation, and that's given to us as X equal negative 20P plus 500, and there's even a restriction given that this is only for 0 less than P less than equal to 25. Okay, so our first step is we want to express revenue as a function of X. Okay, now if we're going to do this as a function of X, we're going to use our original formula that R equal P times X. But then now I've got to take this equation and rearrange, because if I want it as a function of X, I have to leave X and substitute in for P. So this equation was X equal negative 20P plus 500. Solving that for P, we'll subtract off the 500. And then dividing by a negative 20, we'll get negative 1/20 X. And 500 divided by 20 gives us 25. So this will be plus, since we'll have a subtraction divided by a negative. That's what the demand equation is in terms of X. So to get R as a function of X, we're going to take this and plug it in for the P. So negative 1/20 X plus 25 times X, negative 1/20 X squared plus 25X. Okay, now the next three parts all have something to do with maximizing revenue. The equation for revenue is a quadratic because of the square, and it opens down. So it's going to be a parabola that opens down on the graph, and the max will occur at the vertex. So parts B, C, and D all have to deal with the vertex. There's a couple of different ways we can find that. We can find the vertex by hand. The numbers here are not great, particularly with this negative 1/20. It's still possible though. So even though this one actually says to find the quantity X that maximizes revenue, so we're looking for the number of things sold, regardless of whether I was doing B, C, or D first, to find the vertex by hand, the first thing you have to do is find the independent variable, which in this case is X. And that's the formula negative B over 2A. B is the number multiplied by X, which is 25. A is this negative 1/20. So we get negative 25 over 2 times negative 1/20. Now we can simplify that on the calculator. Some I can just see on my own. A negative over a negative, that's going to become a positive. But you got to be careful with parentheses. 25 divided by the quantity of 2 times a 1/20. So I've got two sets of parentheses here. And that simplifies to give me 250. Okay, so that's the quantity X of products that will maximize the revenue. And again, that's negative B, so that was our 25 value, over 2 times A. Okay, now the next one is, what is the maximum revenue? Well, if I've already found this, all I have to do is take my revenue equation and plug in. Negative 1/20 times 250 squared plus 25 times my X value of 250. Again, I've got to be careful with parentheses. It is a negative 1/20, and the only thing that gets squared is the 250. And then I'm going to add in 25 times 250. And I'm getting 3,125. Okay, and that is my revenue, so that is money, and put a $sign there. Okay, and then the last part, what price should be charged? Okay, price is P, so we're looking to find P. A few different ways we can actually do this. Maybe the easiest is to take this equation that we have. P equals negative 1/20 times, again the X value was 250, plus 25. So that's kind of a similar manipulation, just don't have to do a square and got fewer numbers here, times 250 plus 25. This is 12.5, and this is price, so I want to represent that as money. Now the other way I could algebraically find P once I have R and X, I can use the fact that again revenue is price times X. So I could have done my revenue, 3,125, equals my price times my X value, 250. And then all I have to do is divide. And it's the exact same value, 12.5. So that's something that you could do to double check this if you want. Of course, if you're confident you've done it correctly, it's fine. It does give a couple of options. Okay, now, also with these, parts B, C, and D, I did all of these algebraically. They could have been done on the calculator graphically. So to do it graphically, I have to use a Y instead of an R. But I'm going to put in this equation. Now again, you got to watch your order of operations. It is a negative 1/20 times x squared plus 25x. Now, one of the issues with doing it graphically is we have to come up with a good window. We can use some things here to help us. So we're told that x is the number of things that we're selling. So we're certainly not going to sell negative amounts, so that's going to start at 0. I don't know how far to go out for my X max. This happened to have already been at 100. Oh, I can just leave it there for now. And so I'm going to use a scale of 10 for my X scale. Now what about my Y's? That's my revenue. Again, I'm not going to have a negative revenue, so I'm going to start that at 0. Now, I already have a feel for how high my revenue is going to be because I already found the max value, but what if I didn't know? So what if I just guess at 500? I'm going to leave this at 50. We hit graph and see what we get. Now I happen to be seeing part of my graph here, so that might help me to get the window. I can see that if I know it's a parabola that opens down, I have not gone up high enough yet on my graph. And I'm also not seeing it come down yet over here, so maybe that tells me I need to move farther over this way. The other thing I can do is hit trace. If I hit trace, it automatically puts the cursor on the graph, and already I'm up at 1,125. And if I move around a little bit, now I'm up at about 1,500. It's still climbing. I'm around 2,000. So it's telling me I need to move my window. So again, I'm going to go 0, 2. I wasn't going out far enough. I'm going to try 200 because I hadn't seen my graph come back down yet. Let's move that to 50 on the scale. And I'd gotten up to 2,000, so let me try 2,500. Okay, I'm still not seeing the full parabola. And I'm also still not seeing it come down this way. So that tells me again, I still need to go up higher and move more to the right. So my window, I was at 200, I'm going to go to 500. And put a tick mark every 100 spot. I was at 2,500, I'm going to go up to 5,000. I'm just taking guesses here. All I need is a window where I see the parabolic shape. And there I've got it. In particular, I need to see that max. Okay, so I'm going to draw a rough sketch of what I'm seeing. But for parts B, C, and D, all focusing in on maximum, I need to find the vertex. And now that I have it on the calculator, I can use the calculator to do that. So it's under the trace menu, option number 4. Move to the left and over to the right. And then as close as you can and hit enter. And what do you know? 250, now there is a rounding issue here, so you do have to keep that into consideration when you're using the calculator, and the Y value is 3,125. So instead of using the negative b over 2a to get my 250, I could have used the calculator, that's the x value. Instead of plugging 250 into my formula for r, I could have just used the corresponding y value if I have that point. But I still have to do algebra to find the price, because I only get 2 values on my vertex, and I'm asked for 3 different things about maximizing. Okay, now the last part here. What price should the company charge to earn at least $3,000 in revenue? Okay, $3,000 is what I'm comparing revenue to. Now this is one where so far the only way we know how to do this is with a calculator. So I've got this graph. There's my revenue function, and I want to compare it to 3,000. So I'm also going to separately graph y equal 3,000. Now I see it's cutting through my graph right up here at the top. I'm not getting a very good picture. I want to give myself a little bit of a better view of this, and notice that I have wasted space up above here. So instead of going up to 5,000, what if I went up to 3,500? I know the max is only 3,125, so I'm still giving myself some space. But I think this will just give me a little bit of a better perspective. Okay, so at least now I can see a little bit of a gap in between my parabola and this line. Because in order to earn at least $3,000 in revenue, I need my revenue to be higher than this line. So I'm looking for what happens in between here and here. So I need to find these two intersection points. All right, so I'm going to use the calc menu. Option number 5, intersect. I'll just find the one on the left first. It has an x value of 200. And I already know the y value. The y value has to be 3,000 because that's what I'm comparing it to. And then I have a second one to find. So the one over here on the right. That has a y value of 300. Okay, now you got to be careful on how you answer the question. We've found that this is going to occur between x equal 200 and x equal 300. And on what we have graphed, the x value is the same as what we have for our quantity sold. And that's not what it's asking. It's asking us for price, not quantity sold. So I know that the x is between 200 and 300, and again that's the number of things that I'm selling, but I need to find the corresponding price. So price between, now here again I have a couple of options. I have the number of things I'm selling and the revenue, 3,000. So I could just use the equation R equal P times X and do division. The price is going to be 3,000, the revenue divided by 200. And then for the other one, the revenue 3,000 divided by, the quantity X, 300. Which means, when I do that division, here I get a price between $15, and this one I can even see, $10. So you might want to list it 10 to 15, because we usually go lower to higher, $10 and $15. But that's what we should charge in order to get a revenue of at least $3,000.